Well, I'll tell you what, I've been wanting to talk to you about this because I was reminded of something. Gosh, it's probably been a week ago now, maybe. But my friend Gerald Briscoe has a Twitter account. I think it's at FG Briscoe for Floyd Gerald Briscoe, which is his given Oklahoma name. And he's on Twitter and he's been tweeting out pictures of stuff that he's found. I guess he's going through one of his storage areas or whatever, and he's hashtagging shed treasures. And it's a picture of just an oddball memento from his wrestling career or his time in the WWF. And one of the things that he tweeted the other day was a picture of 2 pages of ideas that, and I sent it to you, Brian, because I said, this is the same thing we talked about before. You confirmed it, but it was the ideas that our friend Shitstain came up with before he was an official member of the creative team, in parentheses.
And by the way, anyone can hear the review of all 3 pages, not the 2 pages that Jerry Briscoe tweeted up, but the 3 pages. We have the video up. I think it's Jim Cornette on Vince Russo's ideas for Shotgun Saturday Night.
Yeah, and it's actually one of our more popular clips, as I recall, because it was, and it's not like Jerry was concealing anything. He might not have had all 3 pages there. He shot the 2 of them, but we had talked about it because I had the notes and I'd found the notes in my files, right? And then he tweets out that picture and it reminded me of something else because I had copies of the notes here that came off the copy machine, right? And because
in the office.
Well, in the office, because as I mentioned, we were discussing them at a writing meeting. It was me and Vince and Bruce Pritchard, and Jim Ross may have been there that day and may not have, but it was definitely me and Vince and Bruce. And that's where I got my copy of these brilliant, earth-shattering, revolutionary ideas. But I was reminded by Jerry's picture that Vince had told me. I guess somehow the chore between whoever was in the room that day, the 3 or 4 of us, the chore fell to me. I don't know if Vince told me directly to fax this shit to the agents that were going to be working on the upcoming Shotgun Saturday Night debacle premiere and series that turned into such a debacle. And that would have been Jerry Briscoe and Jack Lanza and my God, I'm trying to think.
What are they thinking?
Might have been, what now?
What are they thinking when these ideas they think that you guys are playing a joke on them when these ideas get faxed?
No,
it's one thing you being in the room.
I'm gonna get to it. Because basically, George the Animal Steel, Jim Myers may have been in it, but it was still a small group, right? But the task somehow fell to me, send to the shotgun agents. We're going to be, because didn't we start in January? This was in December. So I must back up a second. And do the kids understand what a fax machine is now, the children out there in the audience?
Probably not, even though they still exist, because every now and then someone tells you, like, oh, we can fax your records. I'm like, to who? Where? How?
Yeah, well, kids, if you want to Google it, but for the adults in the room, then maybe you need a brief refresher. The fax machine, before the advent of all of this sending documents electronically through the internet and everything, you could take a piece of paper and stick it in a fucking machine on your desk, and it would scan the paper there, and the fax machine called a phone number that the person you wanted to send that to had dedicated to his fax machine, and that fax machine would answer the phone line and retrieve that image and peel it out on a piece of paper, so you would get a facsimile of the original document.
Fax paper.
On the other end, on fax paper, which at one point was like this fucking slick shit that took a special ink cartridge and it came in a roll and the ink would fade over time, so it would be nothing. It was like disappearing ink.
That's right.
And the shit would roll up in a fucking, oh. But anyway, so now here's the thing. I've also mentioned that I didn't have any goddamn anything in my office at the Titan Tower. I had a desk, a lamp that I brought from home, a chair, the frame poster of Vince that I stole when I left that was hanging in there when I got there, and nothing in the drawers because I never wanted to fucking be there. I took it home because we were at Vince's house anyway. Go home from there. I have a fax machine at my house that I'd had since me and Sandy Scott and Tim Horner got the same kinds. Remember that story? Horner's probably still using his, wondering why nobody will write him back. So, but the thing is,
what a throwback.
Well, see, it's if you got to be a listener of everything here, folks, to get all the entertainment. But the fax machine I had at home, that was the one that I'd brought from Tennessee with me. But now think about this, and I'll tell you how it transpired. I had first been living in the apartment for a few months until we found the house to rent. And so I'd moved in the house, I think in July, I believe it's first week of July. And I plugged the fax machine in the phone line I had for the fax. But I forgot that you could customize the top of the fax in the machine. You could type it in so when the person on the other end got the fax, it would say like from your name or your company or fax number 203, whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
Well, I'd been using a fax machine in my house for a few months, and then somebody told me, "Hey, we tried to fax you back, but it still was my Tennessee shit. It was Smoky Mountain Wrestling 615, whatever the fuck the fax number I had." I was, oh shit! Now I had to try to find the book to the instruction manual to tell me how to change that, right? And that took a while, and then I set the book down and said, "Well, I'll fuck with that later on." And so right about this time, you've heard of these happenings just converging, right place at the right time. I'd had the book sitting there, and now I've got a reason to fucking fax something. And I'm going to goddamn, try to see if I can figure out how to do this at the same time. So I'm faxing at Jerry Briscoe and Jack Lanza, maybe George Steele or whatever. So these ideas from Russo were like you said, they were going to think, because they weren't in the meeting where Vince is taking the attitude, well, some of it's way out there, but we need to just get all the ideas. We need to make the show different. I'm doing a lousy Vince, but you know what I'm saying. And I'm thinking they're going to see that. They're going to somehow think, I want to make sure that they didn't think I had anything to do with this. And they knew what I thought anyway. But to try out and see if I could customize the thing, I typed it out to where, and that's what Jerry Briscoe's picture tweet reminded me of. The top of the fax said, "This is your fax from shithead." And 203, whatever the fucking number was. And I faxed that stuff, and yeah, they thought what you would think they would think about the ideas that he had thought of. But the kicker to this story is, after I'd done that, and I think maybe the pizza came, or we were having delivered, or something happened and got me distracted. And I said, well, I'll fix it later on. And I never did change it till like a month later. I can't even remember what it was, but it was some kind of official shit that Vince McMahon wanted people in several different departments to know. And he had me take it home and fax it to the fucking office the next day, or that night or whatever. And the next day, Bruce Pritchard calls me and says, "Did you send the office a fax that said, 'Here is your fax from shit'?" But anyway, I'm sorry. When I saw that picture from Gerald Briscoe, "Here is your fax from shithead," I was like, God damn, I quote tweeted it. I said, yeah, this is when I figured out how to customize the fax there.
That's one of the holy grails of wrestling collectibles now, the last shithead fax.
Yeah.
It went to a larger audience than the other ones, but It's still a hard to get item. You know, Jerry Briscoe also tweeted out, I saw, because I went and looked through my files and I found it from your 1996 Christmas card. It was a whole thing about how much you hated Connecticut. I actually never realized you wrote it because I think the ending was like, I'm going back to Georgia. I was like, oh, that can't be Jim.
No, I didn't write it. And I didn't claim to. I copied it and sent it out. And I think because so much stuff that I sent to people I did write, they got used to it. But that was something. And God damn it, I can't remember, but a friend of mine in my social circle at the time had sent me that on my move to Connecticut. And it was so fucking funny and turned out to be so halfway true that I copied it and sent it out. But I can't take credit for that. That was well, it wasn't on the internet or whatever, but it was being passed around on copy machines in offices across America, I bet, at the time.
But I think some people may have thought it was you, even though, because it came on the heels of you actually writing some stuff previously about how much you initially loved it and immediately hated Connecticut. So I think people thought it could have been you, but the Georgia thing was the giveaway to me at the end.
Well, yeah, and then also in 96, I think it was, is when I sent out my Christmas poems again that I'd written about WCW, because that was the year Dick Murdoch died, and he howled over those things. So I sent them out again in his honor, and those were originals. Copies of those floating around on eBay maybe pretty soon, because that was a small circle as well. Till Uncle Dave printed it in the Observer one year. And actually, I wasn't upset about it because I liked it reaching a wider audience, because that was the one I think that Skeward heard.
You never talk about that, though. The fact that, like, you look at all your accolades. Photographer, not just a photographer, successful photographer, had his own magazine for his local promotion, syndicated photos all over the place, manager, everything at the Superdome and the Last Stampede, everything after that, executive, booker.
Where is this going?
No one ever talks about the poet and the fact that your poetry has been published in the Observer, so you're now a published poet on top of all your other accolades.
Well, and I am quite a wordsmith because, in the words of Luther Haggs, when you work with words, words are your work.
In the words of Luthez, what did you say?
Well, that's because of his cauliflower ears.
What?